Welcome, everyone, to Bet What Happens Live. I am your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me once again for another season of Bet What Happens Live, my buddy of Scores and Odds, the one, the only, Grant Neefer. Grant, you ready for another NFL season?
Oh gosh, the last hour and a half have just been incredible. So nice to have it back. It's so nice to have some bets in play. I already got some ones that are looking real good. No, you just got
I
real
just
dark there.
I just got super dark here. There we go. We're working out the technical difficulties still. I was trying to turn my brightness up one and I hit the off button, but technical difficulties aside, right now the Kansas City Chiefs lead the Baltimore Ravens by a score of 13-7. However, Baltimore does have a 3rd and 8 upcoming on Kansas City's 35. So Grant, thoughts on the game? Are there any player props you're looking at right now to bet?
Yeah, while I go over that, check out Mahomes' projection for passing yards. I'm kind of liking the over 267.5. Obviously, things will play out a little differently based on what ends up happening on this drive, but I want to be ready to pounce on it. Seems like it's about 10 yards too low right now. His pregame line, I think I got all the way up to 268.5. Obviously, hasn't had the biggest first half, but the penalties and stuff should end up kind of going back to where they should be. I know they were real whistle happy at the beginning. Feel like that's not going to be the case the second half. Obviously, some of those weird ones were there that should be fixed by halftime, but the line seems a little bit too low. He's playing really well. He's throwing at will. Baltimore's been eating up a lot of the clock, which I don't fully expect to happen next half. Should be passing ball a little bit more, but that line just seems a little low. You got it up yet?
I do. So we have in the model 252.5 right now, but it is likely Kansas City gets the ball back and they will start with the ball in the second half. So that's one of those things where it's hard to account for those possession type factors. So I don't mind a lean towards the over. I don't know if I would necessarily bet it though.
I am betting at 264.5 at DK right now, minus 112
I
juice on
like
the
it.
over.
Grant going with Patrick Mahomes over 264.5 passing yards. Already going against the model technically with the first live bet of the season, but no, it's fine because like we said, the model can't quite account for these possession-based things. The Chiefs are going to get the ball in the 2-minute drill and start with the ball in the second half. So I totally can get behind Patrick Mahomes over 264.5 passing yards at DraftKings. Where are you headed next, Grant?
Looking around, trying to find what do you have as the current likely line? Obviously, they're not getting ball back in the second half. His odds just went down, but it's something I'm potentially looking into. At the moment, he has let's see, 20 receiving yards. Seems to be the dominant guy. Ooh, no good. This makes more interesting. Now they're going to be even more pass happy after missing that field goal. Hopefully, you guys aren't delayed and I didn't just ruin that for you. But he seems like a guy that could be a little bit more involved for the rest of the game. Maybe Mark Andrews is still banged up. Just not using him as much as they like, and likely is almost as good. Not quite as good, but almost as good. Saying at 31.5 yards is his current line. So 12 in the second half is what he
Yeah,
needs.
so he currently has 20. And you said 31.5 is the line.
Yep.
We're right around 50-50 on that. But again, that was with Andrews projected for more usage than Likely. But since Likely has had higher usage than our pregame expectations, I think I would mentally bump that up in the model as well. So I'm totally fine going over there, especially with the Ravens
What's the
trailing
projection
as much
for
as they are.
Andrews? What's the projection for Andrews in the second half?
Andrews is projected for a median of 31.5 yards. He has 0 right now, of course.
Yeah. His line's at sitting at 21, so he likely takes 5-6 yards away from, or likely takes 5 to 6 yards away from Andrews. So
Right,
I'm
right.
going to hit that over 31.5 over at DK minus 120 juice. I think that
Yep.
one's a pretty solid one. And gosh, it feels so good to just start the year
Fire
firing.
some live betting. So yeah, Isaiah Likely over 31.5 receiving yards at DraftKings at minus 120. Before we get to the next bet, I do want to just remind you all, follow us in the Action Network app. We have a Bet What Happens Live handle in the Action Network app. In case you happen to miss a halftime show, you can get those, turn those alerts on. You'll be able to get live alerts for the bets that we make during these Bet What Happened Live shows. So make sure you're following Bet What Happens Live in the Action Network app. All
Or
right, Grant.
you watch us, but if you're just too
Exactly.
locked in
Just in
something
case you
else,
miss.
then you at least get the notifications. Looking at other things, Justice Hill is an interesting one. 31.5 over at FanDuel, 28.5 most other places. It's an interesting line. He's sitting at 21. He got 3 receptions almost right off the get-go. I believe the first drive, at least 2 in the first drive, maybe 3. Hasn't been used much since. Obviously, he is kind of the third down guy. Could potentially change based on if they get the ball back in this half. I don't think they will. Derrick Henry, clearly, if they're in a running potential play, he's in there every single time. But similar to what we saw in Tennessee last year, outside of that, he's not in there. So it's Justice Hill. Happened to get a few dump offs. I think that Kansas City kind of corrects a little bit, although they do run a defense that can give up a decent amount of yards to running backs. I don't know where I'm sitting. My lean is towards the under just because his pregame line was set at 10, and now it's 10 for the second half.
Yeah,
So
so Justice Hill, right? 21 yards, is that right?
yeah, so it
So
likely is going to change here after the Ravens just turned the ball over. So
yeah,
that
exactly.
makes things a little bit interesting. I hit likely's over, right?
You did. So
But
what's
that was
the
good.
line you're looking at? Justice Hill under what?
31.5. It's still
Under
sitting at
31
31
and
and
a
a half.
half.
I like it slightly less. 35.5. There we go. Just up. You got a nice ARB situation. 35.5 under on FanDuel and 28.5 over at DK and
Well,
MGM.
I have
Should
good
we know
news
what?
for you. We're actually showing undervalue even at 31 and a half, let alone 35 and a half.
So, I mean, the big thing is that they're on this drive, and I'm a little bit worried about it. So,
The Chiefs are on this drive and then Baltimore will get the ball back.
the Ravens likely going to have just
Oh, right,
on there.
because the Chiefs just turned
Yeah.
it over. Yeah.
So let's wait until halftime with that one. See,
I
there we go.
think that's a good one. Good spot to wait until halftime because I think we'll be showing value on the under there for Justice
Yeah.
Hill. So if you all want to make the bet, if you're watching it live, feel free. But because
Well, it's at
because
41
the
and a half right
Ravens,
now.
yeah,
41 and a half
because
right now. Just got an 8-yard reception.
well, it's a good thing we held off on that.
Yeah, that was the reason why I waited.
There we go. So Justice Hill at 29 receiving yards right now. His line is up to 41 and a half. We're still showing undervalue on that, but we're holding off on that because the Ravens do have the ball in the 2-minute drill. But that's definitely going to be a spot we will be looking at once halftime rolls around. Any other thoughts right
So
now, Grant, while the Ravens are
right
driving
now,
here?
Lamar Jackson hitting the over of 70.5 stale line over at MGM. I got him.
Lamar Jackson over 70.5. I assume that's
Yeah.
rushing yards, right?
If you guys see that, I'm looking at something right now, but I'm gonna go make sure to check that it's available on the app. My software might be a little bit off. Might not be looking at the right things, but I'm opening up MGM right now. I believe it's still at 70 and a half.
Let's double check that here. I'm gonna open up NBM as well.
Yeah, you check on that.
Rushing yards, Lamar Jackson off the board. So I think it's just
Okay.
a kind of a
Still, yeah.
not so much stale, but just it's the last thing that we have pulled
Yeah.
in and it doesn't like turn it off when the line is off the board. So
Yeah, that makes sense because he just went up for a 10. It was the line before the 10-yard run.
yeah, so he is up to 63 rushing yards now
There,
for
is that
Lamar
likely?
Jackson.
Is that likely there? Ooh, that's likely 8 yards. He just needs 2 more. Gosh, I love live betting. I love it so much. I love this
It is
show.
fun. So yeah, Isaiah Likely 9 yards, actually up to 29 receiving yards here. And we did take that Isaiah Likely over 31 and a half. That was a great bet, especially knowing we were right at 50-50, but that was with Andrews having much heavier usage. And now that Andrews and Likely have been relatively equal in usage, that 31 and a half made too much sense to take the over there. If you got 32 and a half, totally fine as well.
Yeah, so something we could potentially look into is Andrews under at 19 and a half yards. I don't think I want to take it yet. I'm going to wait and see if Baltimore ends up scoring here, but he just doesn't seem like he's in it. He'll probably get 1 to 2 targets the rest of the game. Clearly, he's still banged up, and they're not going to try and push him because of his injury past and likely playing so well. So it's scary to take a Mark Andrews under 19 and a half yards, but I don't think it's the wrong call.
Under 19 and a half yards. Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of those where we haven't projected much higher. It's just a question of the usage, right? If it, I think 19's a little scary just because he could get more run in the second half. The Ravens are probably going to be a little bit pass heavy if they're still playing from behind. So definitely a spot that's a little nervy because we are showing so much. The difference between Likely and Andrews is we were showing around 50-50 for Likely, whereas we're showing around 65% to the over in Andrews. So when you adjust that down, it's probably closer to 50-50 when you make that adjustment.
Yeah, if they keep the line at 20.5, I think I might hit it at halftime if it's still there. My guess is, yeah, it's already dropping down. So they were incorporating in this drive. So that's what I was a little bit worried about. I'm probably going
Exactly.
to staying away from that. What do we have for Derrick Henry rushing yards?
By the way, Isaiah Likely just went over
Gosh.
38 receiving yards for Isaiah Likely. Rack up that first. Bet what happens live bet of the 2024 NFL season. So yeah, 38 yards for Isaiah Likely. What were you sorry for interrupting there. What were you getting on?
Derrick Henry, what do we have for his current projections? He's at 33 yards. Obviously, they don't get the ball back at the beginning of the half. If they end up scoring here, it's going to make it interesting. If they don't end up scoring, then the under is way more interesting if they don't adjust the line too much.
Yeah, let me update the live line here because obviously the Ravens are in scoring position and that can really affect things. In fact, for Derrick Henry, I'm just going to update it to second half just because it's very likely they will be in the second half when they go into, when Henry has the ball next. So I'm updating this for Derrick Henry. We are showing uh, overall that did that go to second half? There we go. Second half. We're showing a median of 32 yards rest of game, and he has 33 right now. So that'd be around 65 yards total.
That's what the current score.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so if they end up scoring here, I don't think the line's going to go up too much. We might want to look into that.
Yeah, so that would be
That over.
that
Because
over right there on Derrick Henry rushing yards.
you know what?
Um,
It's at 55 and a half now at DK. I'm hitting the over on that.
uh,
Bottle talk me into it. Minus 110.
yeah,
Decent
it's
chance.
moving quick. 57 and a half yards now at DK. So minus 120 to the over at DraftKings, 57 and a half.
Yeah, it's at minus 110 over at MGM. But yeah, still take it at 57 and a half. The
There
model
you go.
talked me into it, the fact that they're probably going to score. He could break one off, but I was originally on the under, but I trust the model a lot. And that's just if it has that much trust, if the game isn't tied or if Baltimore's not leading, then I definitely want to take it with the potential that they are going to be leading here.
Yeah, exactly. So Derrick Henry over 57 and a half rushing yards. It was minus 120. It just unlocked at minus 115 at DraftKings. I believe there's a minus 110 at BetMGM. So, whichever book you have, try to always shop if you can. But I know this is kind of fast and furious. And lines move pretty quickly, pretty much with every play. Once halftime comes around, it'll be a little easier to avoid the line movement that's happening between plays and during every play and things like that. So Derrick Henry over 57 and a half rushing yards is our next bet what happens live player prop bet. And real quick, Grant, right now, just looking at things here, it looks like we have second and goal for the Ravens at the Kansas City 7-yard line, 9 seconds to go. So, big couple of plays here. We may want to just hold off and see what happens. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I just want to know what do you have the line at for Rashee Rice for the rest of the game? He's at 47 yards. They're clearly using him the same way they used him last year. Tons of volume. Obviously, they haven't had the ball a ton in the last 10, 15 minutes, but getting peppered with targets before that, he's clearly the go-to option. Xavier Worthy's more the deep threat, and obviously Kelsey being Kelsey. But his current line's sitting at 73 and a half blocked out over on FanDuel, 79 and a half most other places. That's probably where he'll end up at. So 33 more yards the rest of the game. If they end up scoring here, could potentially be a spot where they're going to have to pass a little bit more,
Mhm.
spot I might want to hit. I think FanDuel should still end up putting the line out at around 79.5 when they come back on the board after this possession.
Yeah, that's a good one because Rashee Rice, our rest of game median is 28 yards, but it could all change with this potential Baltimore score. If this is a field goal, I wouldn't take the over, but if it's a touchdown, then I would potentially take the over because that
It's at
projection
73
is
and a half.
sure to
I
bump
guess
up.
wait on this play. I don't think they scored then because it hasn't adjusted. Yeah, it's going to be third down, 4 seconds left. Probably, do you think they're going for the field goal or they're going to try and get a quick play? Probably quick play. 4 seconds is not a ton of time. So likely going in 10-14. Rashee Rice is sitting at 73 and a half. We have 27 for the rest of the half, putting him at exactly right around there. So models right online with that, with a
Yep.
field goal here.
Yep. And the Ravens do kick and make a field goal. So Kansas City ahead by 3 points now. Just waiting for the market to update live odds so that we can get a win probability, which feeds into my model here.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, we kind of assume.
There
I
we
don't
go.
think they're going
Okay.
to go for a Hail Mary, maybe with Xavier Worthy, but most likely touchback and then go to
Yeah,
the
I would assume touchback and then go, or just kneel it out. 3 seconds left here in the half. So, all right. Based off of current live lines, Kansas City is 62% to win, Baltimore 38% to win. Let's revisit that Rashee Rice line. Our model has him, again, still median of 27 yards rest of game. He's currently at 47. So that would put him at a total of 74. And the
Yeah,
Chiefs will
the
start
line
with the
sitting at
balls. There is that.
yeah. Line sitting at 78 and a half. We're gonna stay away from that 77 and a half now.
Yeah, I
I
think we're right
still
in line
don't
with the
hate the
market.
over, but I'm not going against the model here.
Yeah, we're right in line with the market with that when you account for the fact that the Chiefs are starting with the ball. Uh,
Yeah.
so just waiting on this touchback here we got, and then I assume the Chiefs will kneel it out, and then we'll go into halftime. And halftime's always fun because we like to get into some of our anytime touchdown bets if we have any, quarterback passing props, interceptions. We can look at things like attempts or receptions, those kinds of those kinds of stats as well, not just yardage. So if you're just joining us for the first time here on Bet What Happens Live, we'll also end up taking some of your questions. So make sure to leave those in chat when halftime rolls around, and we'll try to answer a couple questions. So, Grant, we are at halftime. Before we get to those halftime bets, we got a little specialty here for you at Action Network. Our live in-game player prop model actually has a tool in the app that shows all of our live player prop lines, including the edges versus the sports books as you bet them. That is a tool developed by our Action Network predictive analytics team, powered by Sean Kerner's projections and my live in-game player prop betting model. You can use code LIVE20 to get $20 off the annual rate of an Action Pro subscription and get access to that. It's going to come in handy on Sunday, especially when there's a lot of games going on at once. All you have to do is flip open the Action Network app, go over to the pro page there with the live player props, and figure out your favorite lines to bet based off our model edges. So, Grant, let's get to some second half bets. You want to look at touchdowns or you want to look at anything else before we get to the touchdowns?
Let's look at touchdowns. I got them pulled up here, and the first one that's kind of standing off the page is Isaiah Likely sitting at plus 900 over at MGM. Seems a bit too high. Obviously, Mark Andrews, huge touchdown roll. They could potentially use him a little bit more in the end zone, but it seems like it's the likely show at the moment, and he's semi-likely to get a touchdown. See what I did there?
So if I do see what you did there. If I switch Likely and Andrews usage to be 50-50, which is I would say about what it's been in terms of snap count. Now, certainly not necessarily in terms of targets. I get plus 675 as fair value for Isaiah Likely. So I think with the usage bump 9-1, Isaiah Likely anytime touchdown is solid value.
All right, let's take it for a quarter unit. Justice Hill sitting at plus 1,300. Obviously been used a little bit in the receiving game. He's kind of a dump off guy. Obviously, Derrick Henry, if it gets close to the goal line, he can potentially get that work, but it's sitting as low as plus 450 over at Caesars. So there's a bit of a disparity between books between plus 450 and plus 1300. MGM seems to have a lot of lines that are not fully incorporating the new roles of the backup guys.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So Justice Hill, we have at plus 1225. So 13 to 1's pretty thin. It's not quite the same value we got on Likely, where it was 9 to 1 versus plus 675 from the model. So we can do it if you want. The model is showing value, but it's incredibly thin. So I'd recommend a small bet on that if we did it. And
I'm
I'm
staying away,
also
but if you want a nice little ARB situation, plus 1300 over to MGM, minus 1200 over at ESPN bet, it looks like at the moment.
to not score a touchdown.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
very minimal ARB opportunity, but
Yeah, exactly. So if there is an arbitrage opportunity on Justice Hill to score a touchdown, then to not score a touchdown if you go across multiple books. But our only anytime touchdown bet so far, a quarter unit on Isaiah Likely, 9 to 1 for an anytime touchdown. What else?
you were looking at Nelson Agolor before when I was talking to you,
Mm-hmm.
sitting at plus 1300, plus 1200 all over the place. Don't know what the model says, but snap count has been good for him. Usage could end up coming there. Always a guy that can get a touchdown. What does the model say?
Well, it's unfortunate because I really liked the Agolor anytime touchdown line earlier on, but unfortunately, it didn't really get longer. Like just a drive or two into the game, he was plus 1100, and now he's only plus 1300, and we're at halftime. So it has crossed the model threshold, and unfortunately, he's only around plus 1350 as fair value in our model. And the Ravens are not starting with the ball. So bump that down a little bit more mentally as well. Maybe
Oh,
like
this one's
plus
interesting.
1400.
McCole Hardman plus 3200.
Okay. So I need to look at Mecole Hardman's snaps here because I know early on he wasn't on the field at all. It looks like Kansas City Chiefs snap counts. Hardman has not played a snap yet. So I might stay away from that one.
Yeah, that's good. I did. That was just the one that I saw. Immediately thought also then Sky Moore at 40 to 1, probably not a great one, but
Yes, Sky Moore has only played 2 snaps. Amazingly enough, Juju Smith-Schuster almost grabbed a touchdown there. He has played 5 snaps. So, when we're talking about the ancillary pieces, it's really been Rashee Rice, then Xavier Worthy, and then Justin Watson has played 12 snaps to Rashee Rice's 19 and Worthy's 16.
yeah. What about Rashee Rice? Currently got him at plus 400 over at FanDuel.
We're showing plus 450 as fair value on Rashee Rice anytime touchdown.
Darn. Let's see. Looking at Travis
Is there
Kelce.
another one for Xavier Worthy? I know it would be his second touchdown since he had that one in the first half.
Yeah, it's just tougher to find. I mean, he's plus 600 for another one over at DK right now.
Yeah, he is 14 for next touchdown, 2+ TDs, 6 to 1. We're at plus 600. So that's like right exactly at fair value there for Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, probably stay away. Pacheco at plus 250. I don't see a ton of value on that one. Lamar Jackson at plus 400, 425 actually, over at DraftKings. I liked him pregame. He's been running the ball a lot.
He has. Yeah, this is one spot where I'm okay going against the model. Lamar Jackson has already outperformed his rushing expectation in the first half. So we're not going to show anytime touchdown value. This would be more of a going against the model gut call if you wanted to go with that.
Let's throw it in for a quarter unit, plus 425 over at DK. I don't love it, but I liked him pregame. Odds are still good. Playing from behind, rushing the ball a ton. I was also happy I took his ladder up to 80.5 yards. So I'm not far away from that at the moment.
There you go. So Lamar Jackson plus 425 quarter unit for an anytime touchdown at DraftKings. Grant, I want to look at interceptions real quick because that's one of the ones we like to look at. Now, I'm seeing on DraftKings Lamar Jackson plus 170 for the over. We're showing 2 to 1 as fair value, so no value there. And Patrick Mahomes plus 210, minus 280 for the under, and we're right in line with that as well. We're at plus 270 as fair value. So
Yep.
right in line with the market on the interceptions.
Yep, those are the two best lines out there. Passing yards looks like Mahomes is sitting all the way down at 243 right now. Great. Obviously, things change when I didn't get that 2-minute drill. Lamar
Mhm.
Jackson sitting at 219.5 to 222.5. Any value on Lamar sitting in that range?
So we are showing slight value to Mahomes. Uh, what I'm saying is we're showing a little bit under on Mahomes, but they're going to start with the ball, so we're probably in line
Yeah.
there. And then we're showing a little bit over, but just a little bit for Lamar Jackson on that line. But they're not starting with the ball. So again, we're in line with the market in terms of our projections. And that's a good thing. We want our model to be in line with the market a lot of times because we should be, but we want to find maybe some of those counterintuitive situations or those uses situations where maybe the live betting market hasn't quite caught up compared to our model.
Yeah, no, just looking through things. Justice Hill not really getting any work in the rushing game. Um, yeah, he's got one rush for 3 yards. His line's sitting at 6.5. I mean, if they're playing from down, I'm not going to be surprised if they end up giving him a little bit more rushing game work because they only got Henry in on clear rushing potential downs. Now, when it's pretty obvious passing, I'm not going to be surprised if they have Justice Hill in there and he sneaks off 1 to 2 rushing attempts.
Yep.
6.5 seems a little bit low.
For what's the specific prop here?
Justice Hill over 6.5 rushing yards.
Justice Hill over 6.5 rushing yards. Let me just pull that in. He's at 3 right now. 6.5. We are showing 65% to the over 6.5 rushing yards, right?
Yeah, let's hit that. DK
Yes.
minus 115. Also, we're at Caesars and MGM, same line.
Rushing props. Let me just go over here. Justice Hill. Yep. 6.5 minus 115 to the over at DraftKings. So, if the Ravens are playing from behind, that does mean potentially a little bit more work for Justice Hill because he comes in on passing downs and the Ravens could be passing more. They sneak a run to him in there. I like that over very much. So Justice Hill over 6.5 rushing yards is our next prop. Grant, I'm going to come over here to the chat real quick. And I see from Sean Y, I like Mahomes 10.5 rushing yards a lot. I assume that means an over. Let me check on Patrick Mahomes. Right now, he has -1 rushing yards. We are projecting, if we look at 10.5 for Patrick Mahomes, right in line with the market on 10.5. So I don't have a lean either way there in terms of the model. Do you have a lean either way on that one?
I mean, I'd lean more towards the under at 10.5. Honestly, like he's not going to have, we've seen this before. Like he's not going to rush if he doesn't need to. Right now, they're currently playing with the lead. They're starting with ball second half. Potential to kneel out the clock in -3 yards. I thought about betting his over on rushing yards pre-game, but how the current game script is going, I don't see it happening here. Not that I won't. Let me rephrase that. I don't see any value on the over, and I see potential value on the under, but not enough to bet it.
And I see another question here in chat. This is an interesting one. I do want to take a look at this one. This was from earlier. Worthy 32.5, which I now see 29.5 at DraftKings. He has 12 receiving yards right now. If I'm looking, yep, correct stat
Yep.
there. And so if I pop in 29.5 to the model, just the thinnest little bit to the over, 53.5% to the over. So I don't think that's good enough at -115 at 29.5 yards. So gonna pass on Worthy there. If you have any more questions, make sure to keep those coming in chat. Where are you going next though, Grant? And then we'll revisit another chat question.
I'm not really seeing a ton here. I mean, still Lamar, especially with them behind. I want to revisit that. He said 63 rushing yards. Did we already hit him?
Who was that? I was looking at chat again.
Lamar over. Oh, that was the one that was down. So Lamar rushing yards currently sitting at 88.5 everywhere. He's at 63, playing from behind, 22.5 rushing yards. Is kind of even lower than his pregame projection for the second half based off extrapolating it from the entire full game number. He was at 48.5 pregame. So 22 more yards or 25 more yards is kind of.
We're at 22.5 median and 25 average. So we're dead on with the market for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
which is pretty funny because his median will, on average, or I shouldn't say on average, but his median will be lower than his mean projection there. So the median, which is the 50-50 number, for those of you following in chat, would be 22 and a half more yards tacked on to the 63. I got a good one here in chat. Nelson Agolor, half a receiving yard, over or under that. Now, I don't see him listed at DraftKings, but maybe
He's at
FanDuel
FanDuel.
or some other places have that line. Yeah, so I'm looking over half a yard, -110. We have, and again, Agolor kept his normal usage. So instead of taking his touchdown, I'm going to go over half a receiving yard. This is my bet here. We have the 63% to the over for Nelson Agolor to have over half a receiving yard. All he needs is one positive reception to clear this. What do you think, Grant?
What is it? Yeah. What does it have at 10.5 yards? It's currently sitting at 10.5 -140 on the under over at Fanatics. Could be one of those middle opportunities.
-140. Yeah, we're right in line with -140. We have 55.5% to the under. Plus the Ravens aren't starting with the ball, so a little bit more likely, but that puts it like that 58-59% range, which is right in line with the -140. So I think I like the over half at -110.
Yeah, it's -108 right now, so you're getting a little bit more value.
There you go.
Let's see. Derrick Henry, over under 0.5 receiving yards, +125 on the over at FanDuel. I don't think that's providing any value. I just want to see what the model says.
Over half a receiving yard for Derrick Henry. He's currently at 0. He does have one target. We are at 51% over, 49% under.
So at +125, that offers a little bit of value. Should we
It
take it?
does. Let's do it. Right?
Let's do it.
We're going interesting with the Ravens backs here, right? We're going with Derrick Henry over on receiving yards and Justice Hill over on rushing yards, kind of the opposite of what you'd expect, but that's where we catch these books a lot of times with the model. We're able to catch him in these counterintuitive spots.
Yeah, and just we also have over on receiving, but he just needs 4 more yards for that. Yeah, I'm not really seeing anything else. It looks like,
well, we're coming in out of halftime anyway, so I think that might be a good place to stop there. We had a lot of bets.
Yeah, no, we start the year off with a bang. We're already 1-0.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can at least maybe get that Isaiah Likely TD. And we already hit one of the live bets with the Isaiah Likely receiving yards. So hopefully we'll have a good first day here. But we're going to be back on Sunday. I will be live with my colleague Billy Ward of the Predictive Analytics team for the 1 p.m. game window, of course, from around halftime of the 1 p.m. games to live bet some of those for Bet What Happens Live. And then Grant will be back with me for Monday Night Football as well. So that'll do it for this Bet What Happens Live. Good luck with your bets, everybody, and enjoy the second half of the game.